In the headlines this evening, despite strong resistance from opposition lawmakers, Prime Minister nominee Lee Wan-koo finally wins confirmation at the National Assembly. North Korea celebrates what would have been the 73rd birthday of its late former leader Kim Jong-il. His son and current leader Kim Jong-un pays tribute to his father. And Egypt says it has bombed Islamic State targets in Libya after the extremist group released a video showing the mass beheading of Egyptian Christians. Stay with us for these stories and more on Early Edition at 6. Hello everyone and welcome to our newscast brought to you live from Seoul. I'm Na Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Che. Thank you for joining us on this rather rainy Monday evening. Well, Korea has a new prime minister now. Lee Wan-koo was confirmed at the National Assembly today.
Well, the question now is whether and how much earlier concerns about his eligibility will hold him back as he steps into his new role. Arirang News' Kim Jong-il has this story.
After 4 days of bipartisan wrangling, Lee Wan-koo was finally confirmed on Monday.
Of the total 281 votes, 148 lawmakers have voted to confirm, 128 have voted against, and 5 votes are deemed invalid. The motion is passed.
The new prime minister is expected to help push forward President Park Geunhye's policy drives to help working people and revitalize the economy. With Lee's confirmation, the presidential office is expected to carry out a small reshuffle involving cabinet members and presidential aides, based on the new prime minister's recommendations. President Park's office will also be able to avoid questions about her vetting system and avoid a vacuum in state affairs. The vote was postponed once last week after the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy refused to endorse the nominee and demanded he step down. Even before Monday's vote began, it was unclear whether the main opposition party would participate, as some of the party's hardliners had called for a boycott. In Korea, the prime minister is the second highest position after that of president. But the job has been largely ceremonial as the power is heavily concentrated with the president. Lee has been the third prime minister nominee since May, after the first 2 nominees withdrew over allegations of ethical and other lapses. Prior to his confirmation, Lee was facing numerous allegations over various ethical lapses. Including real estate speculation, draft dodging, and allegation that he tried to stop the press from carrying negative reports about him. The nation will now have to wait and see what kind of influence the new prime minister can have over state affairs and what role he will play in assisting the president. Kim Jong-il, Arirang News.
Well, President Park Geunhye has called for a unification roadmap that includes benefits for not only the two Koreas, but their neighboring countries and the world. At a meeting with her Unification Preparatory Committee, President Park highlighted a need for overseas public and private investment in infrastructure for a unified Korea to offset the anticipated unification costs. Her envisioned blueprint would include funding for social overhead capital and resources development in the north. She also asked the committee to work with civic groups to expand people-to-people exchanges so that the economic and social gaps between the two Koreas can be narrowed. Korea's Safety Ministry has begun an intensive inspection across the nation on this Monday to better prevent man-made disasters. The inspections are being jointly conducted by the government and private safety experts on facilities, traffic, legislation, and any system related to public safety. The safety check will continue through April. Now, to give you some background information, the Ministry of Public Safety and Security was established last year following criticism of the government for mishandling April's tragic Sewol Fair disaster. Its public safety budget for 2015 has increased by more than 19% from last year.
Today is an important day in history for North Korea. North Koreans celebrated the 73rd birthday of its late former leader Kim Jong-il on this Monday. The day was marked with fireworks and a visit to the mausoleum by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Our Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
Lavish firework displays color the skies of Pyongyang. It's part of the grand festivities commemorating the 73rd birthday of late former leader Kim Jong-il. Dubbed the Day of the Shining Star, it is one of the country's biggest holidays, along with the birthday of the nation's founder Kim Il-sung, known as the Day of the Sun. The event, broadcast via state media on Monday, shows Pyongyang residents watching the fireworks over the Taedonggang River.
보면 볼수록 솟구치는 격정을 금할 수 없습니다.
North Korea watchers say fireworks have become more common in Pyongyang since Kim Jong-un came into power. The young Kim visited Kumsusan Palace of the Sun at midnight to pay tribute to his father and grandfather. He was accompanied by key military officials, including Director of the Korean People's Army, Hwang Byung-seo. But his wife Lee Seol-ju and sister Kim Yo-jung were absent from the crowd, just like last year.
By visiting the Kumsusan Palace with only key military officials, Kim Jong-un is trying to show that he has taken over the military while also upholding the country's military-first policy and establishing one-man leadership.
Despite earlier speculation about the potential for military provocations by North Korea to mark the Day of the Shining Star, no such signs have been detected. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And the United States is reportedly planning to increase the number of troops it will send to an annual military training exercise with South Korea. The exercise, scheduled for early March, consists of a computerized command post drill called Key Resolve and a field drill called Fall Eagle. Seoul's Defense Ministry says there will be more U.S. troops participating in Key Resolve this year and fewer troops in the Fall Eagle exercise. Last year's Key Resolve involved around 10,000 Korean troops and 5,200 American troops, while Fall Eagle involved over 200,000 Koreans and 7,500 U.S. troops. The planned drills are expected to stir tensions with North Korea, as Pyongyang, as they always have, claimed they are a dress rehearsal for war, while Seoul and Washington say they are defensive in nature.
Egypt is taking revenge for the mass beheading of 21 Egyptian Christians by IS militants. Egypt's military says it has bombed several IS targets in Libya after the release of a video appearing to show the brutal murder. Connie Lee has more.
Egypt is striking back. Its military said on state radio Monday that its warplanes have bombed militants in Libya affiliated with the group calling itself Islamic State. This just hours after Egypt's president vowed revenge for a video appearing to show the mass beheading of 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians by the IS terrorists.
Egypt reserves the right of retaliation, and with the methods and timing it sees fit for retribution from those murderers and criminals who are without the slightest humanity.
Egypt's military said its planes had targeted weapon reserves and IS training camps in Libya. The horrifying 5-minute video released Sunday shows the victims, all male and wearing orange jumpsuits, being marched along a beach before being simultaneously beheaded by terrorists in black masks. The video is called A Message Signed with Blood to the Nation of the Cross, and as the killings take place in Libya, it's raising concern that the militant group is expanding and has an affiliate outside of the group's core territory of Iraq and Syria. The U.S. has also condemned the terrorists for the killing of innocents, saying it is just the most recent of the many vicious acts they've committed. The victims who were working in Libya were kidnapped by the terrorist group 2 months ago and have ignited demonstrations in Egypt with protesters urging the government to take action. Thousands of Egyptians are said to have gone to Libya in search of work since the Arab Revolution there in 2011. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Moving on to the latest on the shooting incident in Copenhagen over the weekend. Police in Denmark say the suspected gunman was a 22-year-old Danish national. Officials are now trying to find out if there was a person or group supporting his actions. Our Son Jung-in reports.
Police in Denmark are focusing their investigation on the gunman's movements before, during, and after the deadly twin shootings that ended on Sunday when he was shot dead by police. Danish intelligence agency chief says the suspect, a 22-year-old man born in Denmark, was on their watch list prior to the attack.
It's a person who was known to us, so yes, it was a person on intelligence's radar.
Withholding his name, authorities said the attacker was known to the police for several criminal offenses, including violence, gang-related activities, and possession of weapons. After assessing CCTV footage, police believe the man acted alone, but they're still trying to see if the suspect received assistance from others. The gunman opened fire at an arts cafe that was hosting a debate on freedom of speech on Saturday afternoon. Among those in attendance was Swedish cartoonist Lars Vilks, who has received death threats since 2007 when his depiction of the Prophet Muhammad as a dog was published. The suspect was shot dead early on Sunday after a second attack at a synagogue. The carnage killed 2 civilians and injured 5 police officers. The Danish Prime Minister says the shooting was a politically motivated terrorist attack, and she promised to protect freedom of speech and the Jewish community in the country. The incident brings up memories of the recent terror attack in Paris. The French ambassador to Denmark, who attended Saturday's debate, believes the motivation for the cafe shooting was the same as for the shooting at the French weekly Charlie Hebdo that left 12 people dead. 손정인, Arirang News.
Well, people tend to think negatively about the aging of the Korean population, of course, and there's certainly reason to worry because there are financial challenges it's likely to pose in the future.
But for some, it's an opportunity for business. Arirang News' Connie Kim takes a closer look on this week's Industry Insight.
Come 2026, about a quarter of the nation's total population will be 65 or older. Now, zeroing in on this lucrative market, Korea's medical machinery industry is targeting the silver generation. The domestic medical device industry has been growing about 5% annually over the past 6 years, topping $4.2 billion in 2013. And it'll only increase as demand rises with the changing senior demographic. But it's not a surge in cutting-edge operating room hardware that's leading the way. Looking at the most recent data, the top manufactured devices were dental implants devices and dental alloys used in fillings. About 9 out of 10 seniors in Korea are implant recipients. The country's leading dental X-ray manufacturer, Vatek, is just one of the many companies that see the potential for this market and is aiming to cash in.
It's important to use accurate dental X-rays, especially for seniors, considering that implant surgery comes with high risk. We expect a surge in demand for our X-ray machines.
And another fact, 1 in 5 seniors are known to be suffering from diabetes. Green Cross MS, a company that specializes in diagnostic tools, recently acquired a blood glucose monitor maker. The company says it's a landmark deal that'll help it focus more on developing technology for the elderly.
This will help us access the ubiquitous healthcare market. We are currently doing research on how a smartphone could be used to track heart rates, cholesterol, and hemoglobin levels.
Medical devices are evolving, going smart and high-tech. Analysts forecast the industry will continue to head towards helping older generations.
Medical machines have gotten smaller, small enough for elders to carry around. If the technology to send data from these medical machines to hospitals are developed, a new ubiquitous healthcare industry will open up.
Korea's changing demographics are affecting how the local market will expand. In the past, medical advancements and devices squarely focused on curing people and saving lives. But now, the landscape of the industry is shifting towards helping people live healthier and longer. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Business partners face a one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Na Hyung-kyung and Daniel Che.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
In many parts of the world, we continue to see countries ease their monetary policies. But what about Korea? The central bank will hold its monetary policy meeting tomorrow. Attention is on whether it will follow the path of its global counterparts. Arirang News' Hwang Ji-hye has this story.
So far this year, 17 countries and the European Central Bank have eased their monetary policies, either by lowering their key interest rates or introducing quantitative easing programs. Canada, Switzerland, and 11 emerging economies like India and China are in this race, which comes as the countries try to prop up their ailing domestic economies. Now, pressure for further monetary easing by Korea's central bank is piling up. But analysts say it's unlikely the central bank will take action on Tuesday.
This month's monetary policy meeting is taking place right before the Lunar New Year holiday, and the central bank has not signaled a rate cut, so it will keep the rate unchanged for this month.
Korea's Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan also emphasized last week that it's more important to push through structural reforms than to debate over a rate cut. Still, analysts expect a rate cut to take place sometime in the second quarter this year.
The Korean economy is not showing signs of momentum for a solid recovery so far this year, just like in the fourth quarter of last year. To give a much-needed boost to the economy, the central bank is expected to cut the rate in April or May before the U.S. Federal Reserve starts to raise its key interest rate.
Korea's low inflation rate is also giving the central bank room to trim its key interest rate. Consumer prices were running below the BOK's 2.5% to 3.5% inflation target band for more than 2 years in January. Some analysts say, however, that the central bank will not join the global move toward monetary easing, as there's no clear sign of it affecting the local financial market. Hwang Ji, Arirang News.
Investments coming from China and Japan are increasing. The combined net buying of Korean shares and bonds by the two countries hit a high not seen since 2010. Arirang News' Kim Min-ji reports.
Foreign capital, especially from China and Japan, is pouring into the Korean financial market. According to the Financial Supervisory Service, Chinese and Japanese investors bought a net $6.7 billion worth of Korean shares and bonds last year. That's more than double from 2013 and an all-time high since the watchdog first began compiling such data in 2009. Experts say while other countries have been cautious when it comes to Korea, which has been suffering from slow growth and low prices, China and Japan have been aggressive in tapping into the market. Last year, Japanese investors bought a net $2.8 billion worth of shares on the Seoul bourse, while Chinese investors bought a net $1.8 billion in shares. Combined, it's a significant number considering that the total net purchases made by foreigners came to $5.7 billion. On the bond market, Chinese investors bought a net $2 billion in bonds last year, becoming the largest investor. In terms of bond holdings, China ranks second, trailing behind the United States. Experts say the inflow of capital from the two neighboring nations can be attributed to China's rapid economic growth and Japan's quantitative easing programs. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea and Japan have no plans to renew their 14-year currency swap deal amid a breakdown in bilateral relations. Korea's finance ministry announced Monday that the last outstanding currency swap deal between Seoul and Tokyo, worth $10 billion, will expire next Monday as scheduled, and no further arrangements for a future deal have been made. This was widely expected as diplomatic relations between the two countries have cooled over Japan's territorial claims to Korea's Dokdo Island. In addition, Korea's need for the extra cushion provided by the deal has decreased as it has abundant foreign reserves backed by a strong current account surplus. There's a wind of change blowing through the global auto industry. Many of the world's leading automakers are pulling factory operations out of emerging markets and putting them back in their home nations. Our Song Ji-san has more on this phenomenon.
The days of automakers busily building new plants in emerging markets may soon be over, with demand slowing in those nations and the growing need to create more homegrown jobs in their own nations. The Korea Automotive Research Institute says auto demand in the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, is expected to sag this year, especially when compared to recovery seen in developed markets like the US and Europe. The Russian market is slumping at the fastest rate. It's projected to shrink 29% this year, marking negative growth for the third consecutive year. China, the world's largest auto market, still boasts annual demand of 20 million units, up 8% from last year, but that's slower than last year's 11% expansion. With emerging markets slowing, some leading automakers are going back to their roots. Ford, for example, relocated its Mexican truck factory to Ohio last year, following the U.S. government's decision to give auto firms incentives for creating new jobs in the United States. Japanese automaker Nissan also announced it was bringing operations at its Rogue factory in the U.S. state of Tennessee back to Japan. That said, Korean automakers Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors are still expanding their production output overseas. Domestic demand in Korea is limited, and they're looking to catch up with global automakers in terms of annual production units. 송지선, Arirang News.
And shifting our focus to the cultural front, while other musicals have come and gone, Jekyll Hyde is one of the few that has remained popular for the past decade in Korea.
One proof of its popularity, go to any auditions for musicals in Korea. Many people will be lined up singing that song from the movie This Is the Moment, that musical that is, and which is why it reached a milestone, 1,000th show. It's not surprising. Our Im Yoon-hee has the full story.
A man determined to find out why there is both evil and good within humankind. But along the process, Dr. Henry Jekyll finds himself at the mercy of a great evil within his own body, who appears in the form of Hyde. The musical first debuted in Korea in 2004 and was an immediate hit. Through the years, it steadily attracted audience members, filling the theater at over 80% capacity with each show.
Before, no matter how early I tried to book tickets, I could never get a good seat. This time around, I was able to get my hands on something.
When Yoo Jung-han plays Jekyll, he gives a powerful performance. And when Cho Seung-woo plays the role, the overall impression is so different, but each performance has its charms.
Now in its 11th year, the musical boasts over 106 million audience members. And this past weekend, it reached its 1,000th show, a landmark accomplishment for a musical. But there's no mystery as to why. With a star-studded cast and special effects to match, it's a show built on the hard work of all those involved.
It's exciting, and to be able to do 1,000 performances is such an honor. I always tell people that Jekyll Hyde is the best performance I've been in.
Jekyll Hyde has been shown on all the major theaters throughout the country and has become a household musical name in the country, now joining the ranks of Korea's most prestigious musical productions. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
Well, the Lunar New Year holidays, or Seollal, is just around the corner, and the mass exodus begins. Many people on the road.
That's right. For detailed conditions on the roads as well as about the weather, let's turn to our Michelle Park. So, Michelle, what do you have for us?
Good evening, guys. The rain we've been having has stopped in some regions, but don't be fooled because it's expected to come and go throughout this evening. Now, until early tomorrow morning, we can expect up to 30 millimeters of rain over in Gangwon province, while 5 to 20 millimeters will fall here in the central region. So for those of you driving home tonight and tomorrow morning, we'll want to be extra careful. But over the Lunar New Year holiday, we'll have a mild, clear, and sunny weather conditions. Now, for those of you who still needs to go home, the best time will be tomorrow evening after 8 p.m. And the roads will be mostly congested at the times listed here. So follow up, and I hope you have a safe drive home over the holiday weekend. Now, having a look at the readings for tomorrow, so we'll start off the Tuesday morning at 2 and gets up high to 6 in the afternoon, while Daegu and Busan will top to 9 and 10. And to other regions, Jeju Island gets up at 9 as well. Dokdo hits 5, while Mangkangkang dips low to -1 degrees. Well, that's all for me at this hour. I'm Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful evening, and back to you guys.
Thanks for that, Michelle. Well, that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Choi.
And I'm Na Hyun-kyung. Have a great start to your week. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.